And there's no doubt, I mean, I think we have a correspondent who is regularly embedded with the British and Americans, and I think it's interesting to see what he sees and read what he writes. But when I went on my own to Kandahar, last time I was in Kandahar was a year and 6 months ago, I went to the biggest government hospital in Kandahar. And there's no green zone, it's all Taliban. Kandahar, by the way, is effectively occupied by the Taliban. You don't see Western convoys in the city. Look, I'm waiting for the Battle of Kandahar, of course. Anyway, I went to the Merwais Hospital, and quite remarkably, and this is a sign of what you don't find out if you're an embedded reporter, I was given freedom to move around all the wards. I talked to a dying Taliban who'd been shot in the stomach by a Canadian soldier. His Taliban friends were sitting around him, and they permitted me to talk to him before he died. In the next ward were 3 girls who'd had acid splashed over their faces by Taliban supporters who didn't want them to go to school. But the most devastating moment was when, or not moment, but moments, was when perpetually parents arrived with stick-like children, looking like skeletons. And they were rushed to the incubation room where they were putting children into incubators, 3 to an incubator. This is 8 years after we invaded to bring construction projects, new hospitals, etc., to Afghanistan. And I said to the Afghan nurse, what's wrong with these children? What are they dying from? And she said, hunger. I didn't know there was a famine in Kandahar, and nor did anyone say so. The British didn't tell us, and the Americans didn't tell us. I remember writing at the end of my report, I sent it from Kandahar, and I wrote at the end of it, no more soldiers, please, doctors, you know. And it is my belief, and becomes more so as the years go by, and 34 years is a long time in the Middle East. That doesn't mean I'm wise. You might be know a lot more about it than I do, living in Sacramento, because it's the old woods and trees thing. But I believe very much that, number one, militarily, we should leave the Muslim world. We have no business being there. It doesn't belong to us. It's not our land, and it's not our people. In North Dublin, a few months ago, I was making the same point, and Vincent Brown, an Irish journalist, sitting next to me, a friend of mine, we used to put Northern Ireland together, and fairly on the same side. And he said, but Robert, surely the Muslims are a danger to us. And I said, Vincent, are the Syrian army in Dublin? Is the Jordanian army in Washington? Is the Egyptian army on the streets of London? I don't think so. It is we who are there that are not here. And leading on from the same thing, I think I feel as a foreign correspondent. I tried this out on Amira again when we were in the West Bank together. That village I told you about, Amira Huss was with me then. She took me to it, actually, to be fair. And that is that, you know, when you start in journalism on a local paper in Britain, I guess it's the same if you still do that here. No, you go to journalism school. Anyway, it's the same basic thing. You're told that to be fair, neutral, honest, unbiased, you must give equal space in your report to each side. So, for example, anyone here been to Newcastle upon Tyne in England? I'm sorry about that. Anyone here been to Blyth, north of Newcastle upon Tyne? Good, don't go there. That is where I began as a cub reporter, reporting Blyth Spartans football matches against, I think it was Gateshead United. And of course, half my report went to Blyth Spartans and half to Gateshead United, even though they almost invariably won. Then I covered, of course, local authority, public inquiries. If they wanted, you know, the local government wanted to build a new motorway, a new freeway, highway through the countryside, we'd cover the government's reasons for building this wonderful new public convenience, and then we'd cover the protesters and why they didn't think this road should be built. But the Middle East is not a football match. It's a bloody tragedy. And these 50-50 rules cannot be stuck on to the Middle East. I think it is our job as foreign correspondents to be neutral and unbiased on the side of those who suffer. If we had been present reporting the slave trade in the 18th century, we wouldn't give equal time to the slave ship captain. We'd be talking to the slaves and writing about those slaves who were thrown overboard on the long voyage to America from Africa. If we were present at the liberation of a Nazi extermination camp, does anyone think for a moment we will give equal time to the Nazis or the spokesman for the SS? When I was in Jerusalem in August of 2000 with click, 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 you know, the clock was ticking and ticking away, I was only a few hundred meters from a Palestinian suicide bomber of Islamic Jihad who walked into the Sbarro pizzeria just down from King George's Street in West Israeli Jewish Jerusalem. And he saw many of the families there had children. More than half the 16 dead were children. I saw a woman with a chair leg through her and an Israeli little boy with no eyes. Did I give half my story to the spokesman from Islamic Jihad? No. I wrote about the victims and the survivors and went next day to the funerals in West Jerusalem, of course. When I was in the Sabra Shatila camp in West Beirut on the 18th of September 1982, climbing physically over decomposing corpses, 1,700 Palestinians murdered by Israel's militia allies in Lebanon as Israeli troops watched. Did I give equal time to the Israeli Defense Force? No, I certainly did not. I wrote about the survivors and the dead. And that, I think, is the only fair way to report the Middle East. All those who suffer and suffer injustice, and the Israelis have suffered, historically, massive injustices before the State of Israel existed. Beyond the word injustice, I'm talking about the Jewish Holocaust. But today, now, we have to deal with realities. And the reality to report is to report on those who suffer injustice. If we don't do this, the world will not learn. And the language of cliches, the language which you're so used to and I'm so used to reading, will continue. Many of my colleagues on Western newspapers are not as fortunate as I am to have a good, strong, tough editor and a great paper. There are other great papers. The Guardian, if you go to France, even Figaro, which is right-wing, Le Monde, Libération, Corriere della Sera in Italy. They'll tell you pretty much the truth. You know, I'm not the only journalist trying to do what others are trying to do. But I fear that we're going to carry on living in this world of cliches. You know, how many television companies did mention the Berlin airlift in relation to Gaza? Did the BBC? Did it hell? Because I think at the end of the day, we believe in the peace process, the roadmap, keep the fence around the Palestinians, let the key players sort it out, and remember what this is all about. Terror, 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 terror. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.